So, welcome again. And as we were discussing, the structure for the session today is to continue our discussion on character building. Then we will move on to meditations on twin heart, and meditation on twin hearts, and finally we'll practice forgiveness. So, a quick reminder, and I think it's always a good idea to just check why are we here. What is it that brought us here today in this session? Why are we discussing what we are discussing? And I like to do that again and again. Apologies if it gets repetitive for some people who have been joining for a while, but it's always a good idea to just to take bearings of why we are here, because it's super, super important. And we'll talk about that today specifically. So the reason why we're discussing what we're discussing on character building is because of what we started with, meditation on twin heart. As we were talking, it's a very powerful meditation. It is simple in its nature. It's a 20-minute exercise, so a lot of people take it for granted, but there is significant amount of energy which comes in. And just like any meditation, any spiritual practice, any wholesome activities, whenever we do something like that, a lot of energy enters our system. Now, this energy has a fertilizing effect. By that we mean that any tendencies that we have, either active ones or some latent ones, they get activated and they get enhanced. Master Choa used to say that spiritual energy is like fertilizer and our tendencies are like seeds. So everything gets enhanced, everything grows, which means our good qualities as well as not so good qualities. Or maybe a better word would be our wholesome qualities and the unwholesome ones. The reason why we actively do character building is to ensure that we keep the unwholesome active tendencies in check, and we don't, well, let's say, have an interesting life as we continue with our weekly practice, daily practice, and whatever. And again, important to remember, this is not just about meditation on twin hearts. This is about any activity which we do, which brings in energy within our system. So not everybody comes. Well, there are right now, what, 6 of us, 7 of us. Not everybody is going to be meditating regularly. Some people do different activities. So if you're out there and helping other people, for example, there are a lot of people who are feeding the hungry, homeless people, they're doing certain activities to contribute to their well-being. All of that brings energy in our system, and this gets magnified. Hence, character building. We are discussing the framework which Master Choa Kok Sui has given us. And within that, today I've got slides. So give me a second. Let's share that. Okay. Let me know when you can see the slides. Is it visible? Okay, good. Thank you. So this is what we're discussing today. Again, a recap for everybody, for people who have joined today, and for me as well. I keep forgetting. I have to keep reminding myself exactly why we are doing what we are. So for the last few weeks, we have been discussing the virtue of honesty and non-lying. If you remember, the first discussion, our first perspective that we took on this was based on the fact on why do we need to practice honesty and non-lying in the first place. And this is where we connected it back to the original teachings of golden rules and the law of karma, the law of creating a life as we go along. You know, practicing honesty and non-lying has a direct effect on sharpening our mind. Why is that? Because when somebody is being dishonest, or if we are lying, then we are distorting someone else's perception. Or if we are deceiving ourselves, then we are distorting our own perception. The effect of that is that our own perception will be distorted at some point in time, which means we will not see things clearly. We will not be able to make clear decisions. And to avoid that, it is a good idea to practice honesty and non-lying. But just like all teachings of Master Choa, this is one perspective. There are many, many reasons, many, many perspectives, and we are constantly encouraged to evaluate things from multiple perspectives. So that was our first discussion on this topic. The second point we covered that day was honesty should be practiced in a mature way. And what did we mean by mature way? Uh, was number one, most important thing, to not use honesty as a weapon. Just because you want to be honest does not mean you get to insult, humiliate other people and make them feel bad and then say that, hey, I'm just telling you the truth. That's how it is. I mean, I'm sure we have all come across people who, for some reason, take pride in that. That, hey, I just say things as they are. I love, and that's it, as if it kind of negates the hurtful impact that the words can have, right? If you remember, Master Choa in his book says that words are loaded with emotional gunpowder, so they can have quite a significant effect on people. So the first thing that we covered was practice honesty, but practice it in a mature way, balance it with loving kindness, and never use it as a weapon. That was first perspective that we covered. Second, we talked about honesty to ourselves. And last week, this is what we talked about a lot. And if you remember, we referred to know thyself and how it is common across various cultures, across centuries, if not thousands of years, same teaching repeated again and again. And why it is super important to do that is because if you look at ourselves, one of the key things that we need to learn is why should I be honest with myself? I heard myself. Okay. So the reason why we need to practice self-honesty is not to get into the trap of judging ourselves, punishing ourselves, or pushing ourselves in whichever shape or form. It is simply to understand. And what we will discuss today will give us a very nice framework to actually practice that on not just to ourselves, but to others as well. So what we are discussing today is the third aspect here, which is accurate perception and correct expression. Now, what is it that Master Choa means by accurate perception and correct expression? Okay, yeah, sorry. Reminder for everyone, teachings, everything that we're talking about comes from Master Choa Kok Sui, who is the author of many books. We are going to refer to three of these today. I didn't introduce the books today, but the ones which we are referring to is, well, number one, The Ancient Science and Art of Pranic Healing, or your Level 1 Pranic Healing book, Achieving Oneness with the Higher Soul, another fantastic book. For I think some of you have taken this course. The ones who haven't, I would highly, highly, highly recommend this. Well, like all courses of Master Choa, but maybe this is my favorite. This was the first course I ever did, so maybe that's the reason. But I would highly recommend that. If you do not have the opportunity to do the course in the near future, get the book. Always a good idea to just read the teachings directly. And the third, again, one of my favorites, the Lotus Sutra, the tiny little book. These are quotations from Master Choa from many, many of his lectures. Okay. And I think in addition to the teacher, I would like to point out that I listen to a lot of people uh, who talk about some of his teachings, who had the opportunity to directly study with him. Some of the senior students like Master Ko, Master Hector, there's a gentleman called Sri Ram in India. So a lot of what I'm saying is maybe inspired or directly picked from their lectures. Okay, those are my disclaimer. I'm practicing honesty in telling to tell you where the teachings or where the things are coming from. Okay, now getting on with the topic, accurate perception and correct expression. And this is a framework which I would ask you guys to not just understand or look at the words here, but try and practice. And we'll hopefully have some time today to do that. And when we talk about accurate perception, what does it mean? It means two things, as you can see on the screen: careful observation and correct interpretation. So there are two parts of it. What do we mean by careful observation? Okay, so let's actually listen to the teaching. I'll read from the book and then we'll come back to this in a bit. How do I start? Okay. Accurate perception means seeing things accurately. Accurate perception and correct expression mean that you have detachment. You have to maintain inner peace and calmness in order to see things accurately. Accurate perception and correct expression is one of the most important of all virtues. Okay. Why is it one of the most important of all virtues? Uh, I think it is good to think about it for a minute, right? Because when I first came across when I first came across this framework of virtues, I thought, okay, everything is equally important. You need to practice all the virtues. You need to develop all sides of it and avoid all the vices. But here, we have clearly in writing that accurate perception and correct expression is one of the most important virtues. Now, the reason why it is one of the most important virtues is because once we practice discernment, it allows us to practice any other virtue or any other thing in our life in a proper manner. For example, the first virtue that we covered is called loving kindness and non injury. It is difficult to practice loving kindness properly without discernment. By that I mean, if you remember, we talked about how Master Choa says that loving kindness is actually mastery over power, something that intuitively a lot of people don't think that power and love are related that way. But that's what the teaching is. So if you find yourself in a position where somebody is taking advantage of you, then the correct expression there would not be to be loving, kind, and forgiving. The correct expression might be to draw boundaries, might be to actually, if it's a child who is behaving badly, you cannot say that I have love for you, so I will never punish you, I'll never ground you, or I will never discipline you. The correct expression there would be, yes, I have a lot of love for you, but you need to be disciplined. Otherwise, well, you're going to become a rotten apple, as Master Choa used to say. Because of that, it is very, very important to do that. The second virtue that we talked about was generosity and non-stealing. Now, what does generosity and non-stealing mean? Again, we have to practice discernment on what does it mean. I want to be generous, but does that mean I should give away 100% of my income? Then I cannot pay my bills. So is that using my head properly? Or should I look for the right opportunities to actually practice generosity? Should you be generous with everybody, or should you be selective? If you are able to use this virtue of accurate perception and correct expression, you get answers on your own. I have a few examples that I will discuss today, but that's one of the reasons, not the only reason, why Master Choa himself says that this is one of the most important virtues. Continuing, be realistic. Believe in something when it is validated or verified. Clear-mindedness is not emotional bullheadedness. Check what is the actual condition. You're not your feelings or your emotions. This is not you. Be calm and be clear-headed. Intelligence manifests also as discernment. Regulate your thinking. Do not believe things blindly. Remember, anybody can say anything. Anybody can write anything. Anybody can put anything on a slide. Anybody can put anything on Instagram, YouTube, whatever. There's no shortage of experts in the modern world, right? And that's why we are always encouraged to practice discernment. Do things because you think they are right, because you think they are good. A person with sharp mind and an iron will can do almost anything. Now, there's always a lot of emphasis, for those of you who have attended the classes of Master Choa, one of the first things that we are told is do not take things blindly and use your mind, use discernment. Now, this is super, super important for probably many reasons, but I'll cover two. Two came to my mind when I was thinking about this. Number one is, if we believe anything, then it is just a matter of what is the last thing that we heard, or what is the last thing that we read. Then our actions, our thoughts, our words are simply a function of the last thing we were told. There is no discernment, there is no judgment, there is no intelligence, which means the way we act can be very flaky. And as we read here, clear-mindedness is not emotional bullheadedness, which means our decisions, our actions should not be a function of our emotional state, ideally. Difficult to do, but ideally that is the situation. That's why actually it is a very, very good idea if we are stuck with something and we need to make clear decisions, or maybe we are confronted with a difficult situation and we are not able to keep the emotions out of it, then make those decisions after doing meditation on Twin Heart. It'll be so much easier. Experiment with that. This I can say with personal experience. make your decisions or do your analysis after doing meditation on twin hearts. It's a wonderful thing to do. Now, coming back to why, the second reason why you should not blindly believe anybody. And again, this is also on my experience and other people's experience, that a lot of time when even sessions like this, right, we end up liking some things or we end up believing certain teachings or certain concepts because we have a lot of faith in the person who's talking about them. Maybe we are listening to a YouTube video and I like what I listen to because I like that guy. Maybe if you're talking about some emotional things, if you're talking about taking action and you're listening to Tony Robbins, you might like it. Why? Because you like Tony Robbins as a person. Similarly, true for a lot of spiritual teachers. I mean, again, no shortage of motivational speakers, right? And all of us have individual favorites. Well, almost all of us have individual favorites, right? Now, it's very good to actually do that. And a lot of times when we listen to somebody who sounds intelligent, who sounds very impressive, who sounds like he or she knows about what they're talking and they have thought things out, then we want to give away our power of thinking. Maybe it is mental laziness, maybe it is difficult, maybe it forces us to confront some things which we do not want to. Maybe there's fear underneath. If you're trying to analyze our family members or people, there's a lot of emotions behind that. So it is very, very easy to listen to somebody. And how many times we have found ourselves also in a situation where we wish somebody would just tell us what to do, and I'm just going to go ahead and do that. That is lack of discernment. So we become dependent on somebody, and we will never be able to make our own decision and our own choices in the right way. B, nobody knows our situations better than ourselves, so it is always good to do that. And C, and this is what I really want to cover, is that tomorrow, if the person whose advice we have been taking or somebody who we have been following, he or she, we give them no room to be humans. Tomorrow, if they make a mistake, if something wrong happens, maybe they get into a scandal, maybe they get into some trouble which becomes public, and we're like, hey, how can this person do that? I thought he was doing everything right. The moment that happens, we lose faith in the person, but then we lose faith in all the teachings, all the concepts, all the good things that we may have learned from them. And we absolutely negate them. And then there is no foundation because we did not test the truth for ourselves. We did not evaluate whether it actually works for our life. We simply believed one person or a book or, a poster, whatever. And the moment the underlying foundation of that is shaken even a little, it is very, very difficult to then come back and continue on the good teachings as well. And that's a part which I think is not covered a lot, but it happens. It happens. You will see, I mean, in spiritual schools, you will see, in life, you will see, once a leader moves out, a lot of people just disappear because they were not interested in the teachings itself, but they were interested in the person. And that is again lack of discernment. If it's the right concept for you, if it is the right perspective for you, then it will work. Hence, again, second reason why don't become mentally handicapped. Use your mind, use your brain, evaluate and discern. And that's where we're talking about the framework. Second, if you become dependent on a single person or a group of people, the moment you lose faith on them, you lose faith on the teachings, you lose faith on the concepts, which is just, well, not the best use of time. Now, coming back to a concept. So, careful observation and correct interpretation again. That is what accurate perception is. Anybody here from engineering or science background? It's easier to recall and stress. Okay, so I was an engineering student, and one of the things that we had to do as part of our university thing was to do an annual project, an experiment, and that carried a huge weightage. And I was, well, just like all students, I was supposed to do one. And the experiment in my case was very simple. Everybody had their own. I won't bore you with the science of it, but effectively I had an instrument. I had to create certain things and then observe what's happening and take readings. Just think of it X, Y, Z coordinates, and I have to make sure that I capture them properly. It took a long time. It was about 4 months. So for 4 months, every week, I will go to a lab, I will set up my experiment, and I will take readings. The thing to do was, no matter what is happening, your readings they're simple numbers, so they are very, very clear. You just make note of that. There's no emotion attached to that. There's no drama around that. There is no conditional thing. You're looking at a meter and you have to take the readings, and that's what careful observation is all about. And I'm specifically taking that example. I had a story. We may have less time for it, but we'll see. So, anyways, so when we are talking about careful observation, there is no judgment. There is no background to it. There is no context to it. You are simply observing. If you take an object and you drop it, this object falls down. It's an observation. It doesn't matter what else is happening here. It doesn't matter that I'm on Earth, there's a law of gravity. If I'm in vacuum, this will not happen. I have seen the YouTube video where it doesn't fall, or it falls in a simple way, or the feather and the ball falls. Nothing. You don't need to anything. All you need to do is, okay, I dropped this 100 times and it fell 100 times. I threw it this way and it took this much time. That's where science is beautiful that way. You have simple observations. The moment you start attaching some variables to it, that, okay, I dropped this, but my hand was sticky, so it took time. Or, I dropped it, but it did not fell on my hand. It actually fell on my lap or on the floor. No idea. Too many variables. When you're doing careful observation, all you got to do is observe the condition in front of you. In a real life scenario, let's say you're having a discussion with somebody and you saw the person get angry. And now you need to take care of your reaction to that. So the first thing is you just have to observe, okay, something is happening. This person was fairly neutral. Now suddenly he's not. He or she, they seem very upset. Just record that. The next step would be correct interpretation. Whatever is happening, why is it happening? Once we record that very carefully, then we can make decisions based on that. Now, coming back to my college story, and one important thing about observation, which I forgot, is awareness. You need to be able to observe what is happening all around you. If you're not, then you might miss certain things. In my experiment, I was supposed to record 3 coordinates, X, Y, and Z. I'm oversimplifying, but let's say it was that. I was so focused on one particular part of the instrument that I kept taking X and Y readings again and again and again. I did this for 6 months. And the experiment was not long, but just as you can imagine, in university, I had to book a lab, I have to book a time slot, and I was able to use the machine only for 30 minutes every week. So I will go every week, 6 months, and do that. At the end of 5.5 months, I realized I don't have the Z coordinate. I never recorded it, which at that time was a life and death situation. Now it seems very funny. But yeah, at that time I thought, okay, my experiment is not going to work. I have not made careful observations. I missed what I was supposed to note down. And I cannot make any interpretations. Forget any action. I can't submit my thesis. And I was really, really, well, as you can imagine, quite nervous. Then my professor walks in, the guide who was pretty much always there, but never talked to me once in 6 months. He looked at me and is like, okay, what happened? And at that point, I thought honesty is the only thing that I can use. So I told him exactly what I did, what my experiment was, what I was recording. And I said, I missed this. And he laughed. That's not the reaction I was expecting, but he laughed. And he's like, this is not how you need to record these readings. This is, in simple words, this is not a careful observation. This is very careless of you. I agreed to that. Long story short, my professor said, why don't you go away for 2 hours and come back? Just leave your equipment and everything with me. And I did as I was told, because I really needed to figure things out. I came back 2 hours later. What took me 6 months to do, my professor did it in 2 hours. He had everything ready, gave me the readings, effectively did my assignment for me. And I think I got a grade A in that, which is all thanks to my teacher. But looking back at it, and this actually came to my mind when I was thinking about our session today, I did many mistakes there. I was not careful when I was recording my observations. The good thing that I did was I was very honest about it. So I practiced honesty without actually ever hearing this concept that we're talking about, which was brilliant. And third, I had a teacher or a guide in front of me who had the experience and he was able to observe everything that needed to be done. He could take decisions within seconds, which would have taken me months to do, and my job was done. And if we apply a similar concept in our lives, which I try to now, still not getting there, but if you are aware, if you practice awareness, that means you observe everything that is to be observed and do not let your emotions get in the way of that, you will capture the details that you need to capture. Then you can interpret them and then you can take the final decision. And correct expression, one of the is in a very simple terms, is appropriate action. You can only take appropriate action once you have seen the right picture. I hope I'm making sense. Everybody seems to have frozen on the screen, by the way. Okay. Okay. To make the point, I have put some examples. Gail, you had something to say? No? Okay. So, I've picked this from our discussion last time. And by the way, Gail, thanks for the recommendation of the book. I got that on Amazon as well. It's sitting in my bookshelf right now. So hopefully I'll get to reading it soon. But we were talking about self-honesty. And one of the things that we discussed was people trying to get up early in the morning and the ones who can't, considering themselves lazy and effectively being hard on yourself. Now, let's say that is actually the situation. So very simple observation. How would you practice the whole thing? Again, the formula was use careful observation, then correct interpretation. After that, you will get into correct expression. So observation. I'm not getting up in the morning. Why? I'm watching a lot of Netflix in the night till 1 a.m. And then my expectation is to get up at 5 a.m. If I don't get up at 5 a.m., I'm going to berate myself and call myself lazy. That's just wrong. But let's say if that is indeed the case, then my problem is not laziness. My problem is lack of discipline and routine. And that is what I need to address, not laziness. You can read all the books that you want on how to tackle laziness. It is not going to help you if your problem is lack of planning, if your problem is actually, hey, I cannot get myself to bed at 11 p.m., hence not getting up at 5. I don't know if that's how it works because as we discussed last time, I'm not a 5 a.m. person and no desire to be one. But if that is indeed the thing, then that's what we have to look at. Second thing, or maybe I accept who I am in this case and say, hey, I focus much better in the evening. In mornings, I'm anyways always rushed. So my correct interpretation after observing my own pattern is that I just have a different rhythm. I do not have a 5 a.m. rhythm. Laziness is not my problem. So I simply need to drop this expectation of getting up at 5 a.m. and starting my day because that's not me. That's never going to happen. Okay. Second example. Now, I've taken one example for self and let's take an example for others. Let's say you are dealing with somebody who is constantly angry at you specifically, well, for sanity, let's keep family out of this. Let's say maybe a coworker or a colleague, a friend, and what you observe, and you think that the person is being angry on me. I must have done something wrong. I need to correct my behavior, and I'm the guilty party here, mea culpa. So I need to go back and do something. I have also learned while I was practicing virtues that I need to practice forgiveness. If somebody is angry at me, I need to forgive them. I need to practice loving kindness, project love to them. All very good ideas, but they're not going to solve the problem if what else is possible? Maybe we judge the person, right? This is an angry person. I do not want this person in my life. If possible, I will try to cut this person out of my life, or I'm going to pick a fight, whichever. Okay, but if you just pause and you try to observe, I should not put a slide in front. Everybody seems to be reading the slide and nobody's listening anymore. But okay, anyways, we'll still continue. So anger, as we learned, a lot of time is driven by something else in a lot of people. Not everybody. There are certain people who probably are nasty to you, but maybe they're hurt. Maybe they're upset, maybe they're insecure, maybe they're feeling something, maybe they wanted respect. I actually came across this situation recently. Somebody expected a level of respect, and when he did not give that, they got angry. Angry at a petty issue, but when you think of the issue, it was nothing. So the anger wasn't justified, but the anger was lack of respect. Lack of respect can be treated to how others have treated the person over a period of time. Now, if you see that, then immediately, and it is important to observe that, and I fully appreciate that it is super difficult to be level headed and make observations like this when somebody is pounding you with words, with comments, hopefully not physically. But it is very, very difficult to do that. But that's a very useful thing when we are able to do that. If we are not able to do it in the instance, then maybe after some time we can look back at the situation and next time we are better prepared. So if you observe it that way, then you can interpret that this anger is not really towards me. I don't need to cut this person out of my life because he actually does not have a personal issue with me. What I need to do, maybe this person needs love, attention, comfort, healing, or he simply just wants to talk. And if you just ask the person, okay, tell me what's the matter? Once the anger calms down, you may be able to fix that problem for a long term basis and prevent this from happening. So the correct interpretation could be that, hey, it's not towards me and I need to do something else. However, if the person is somebody, and there are people like that, a lot of people, when they come to meditate or when we get attracted to teachings or discussions like this, we forget that this world is not full of saints. There are people who are genuinely just not nice, and there's not much you can do about that. But if you observe that, and this is, and you notice what is happening, then your correct expression would be very different. You need to have a chat, have a discussion, point it out, find the best solution to yourself. If the solution is okay, thank you. I mean, I'll forgive you internally, but externally, I'm going to maintain boundaries, and we're probably not going to talk for some time. So be it. But once you observe carefully, you will be able to make the decision, make the right decision, and that's the crux of it. Another example. How much time do we have? Okay, we'll close soon. But these are the ones which occurred to me, so I thought I'll cover them. Excessive eating. Excessive eating is something we'll probably talk about when we talk about moderation. But I know a lot of people who think that they have no control over food, and hey, I'm addicted to sugar. I'm addicted to this. I'm addicted to that. And if you look at it, uh, okay, let's deal with ourselves as a subject. Let's say if one of us has this issue of excessive eating. One possible thing is, I love in my case, okay, I love brownies. If I see a brownie, I would like to try it. If I like it, I would like to finish it. And a lot of times, there's not a lot of control. Okay, that's one issue. If that is the case, and at that point of time, I am trying to make sure that I don't overeat, then one very good idea is don't buy brownies, don't have them at home, or don't go to places who serve it. So that's one interpretation of it, and that's actually the right way of doing it. If you believe you have no control, if somebody puts food in front of you and you just have to eat it, or maybe you like a certain kind of food, and if you go to that restaurant, you cannot help yourself, or if somebody is coming from, well, if for people like me who are living in a different country, if somebody comes from your home country and they bring a bag of sweets, you can't resist it. That is one problem. But what if the situation is different? And again, you have to observe carefully. This is one possibility. The second possibility, I eat when I'm upset. Do you remember Kung Fu Panda, that movie? When the panda is upset and he just climbs a peach tree and starts eating dozens and dozens of peaches. And Master Oogway comes to say, okay, so you eat when you are upset. Very careful observation. He's looking at the guy. He saw he's eating so much. He knows that he's upset. This doesn't work if you guys haven't seen the movie, by the way. So, okay. From your faces, I'm guessing not so much. Please watch Kung Fu Panda. Nothing to do with Master Choa's teaching, but brilliant movie. You have got to watch it. Okay, anyways. Forget Panda, we'll replace it with a normal person. Let's say you find yourselves or others that when they're upset, and this seems to be a very common thing, people eat when they're upset. For those of us who have done pranic healing, we understand, and maybe a teaser, do the class on pranic psychotherapy. It will teach you a lot, and then we will realize that the energy center associated with stress, with depression, sadness, anger, resentment is solar plexus, which also controls your stomach, so makes you react differently. Something is wrong here, you think something needs to be put in your stomach, and you eat. People do that. Once you observe that, and that is your careful observation, you can interpret correctly, okay, the emotional state of the person needs to be sorted out one way or the other. Many ways. Do pranic psychotherapy, learn pranic psychotherapy. Yes, I am plugging the class, please go for it. And or maybe the person needs help from a therapist. Maybe he or she needs to see a doctor of a different kind. But if there's no awareness of it, if you haven't observed it, if you haven't interpreted it properly, you will not take that action. You can then keep all the snacks out of your home. You will find something else to eat. You will be sitting at 10, 11 p.m. in the night, getting the exact same things that you put away from your home and finding them on Deliveroo and getting them delivered to your place. An hour later, again, you're eating. Because why? No, you were not hungry. Your problem was different. Hence, super, super important to do that. So again, this is the tool. Whenever we get in a situation where we find ourselves doing something, or we find ourselves reacting in a particular way, or others behave in a certain way, it is always a good idea to just pause, observe that behavior, observe what's happening, try to understand why it is happening. The why is very, very important. And then we can make the right decision. Uh, Taking a decision is also a form of expression. That's also correct expression. So once, if you have a problem in front of you, let's say, very simple thing. Let's say you need to plan a holiday and you have to manage your budget, both with respect to time and money. So careful observation could be, I need, okay, I have X amount of money and I want to plan this holiday. Maybe I don't do it on the term break time. Maybe I go some other time. Maybe I do it 6 months later. That's your correct expression. You understand and then you react. Okay. I will take a pause because we have been talking for a while. Any comments, any suggestions, anything that comes to someone's mind? Any other movie that somebody wants to plug? Not today? Okay. Okay. In the interest of time, we'll move now straight to the meditation practice. So let's meditate.